Happy New Year. Happy New Year. We made it through 2024. I don't know about everybody else, but my 2024 was hard. Oh my goodness, it was hard. From accidentally moving next to one of the loudest trains to not sleeping at night fully because of that train, to not being able to find my community in Houston and moving to Austin, and then moving into one of the worst apartment situations, having to fight that legally, and then come into my apartment now was exhausting. And then managing my mental health and physical health at the same time was near impossible. But I went looking back through an old video. I'll link it up in the cards. It's from the very beginning of my channel where I set some booktube goals, and looking back on it feels really good because the first goal I had set for myself was curating my own taste. I had set that back in the very beginning of 2024. And that came about because at that point, when I was watching the 2023 favorites, it felt weird that I had just watched everybody else's favorites. It felt odd that BookTube felt really small to me at that moment. The people I was watching, it felt like all that I curated for my own channel came from BookTube, in a sense. And I do really feel like in 2024, I went above and beyond in finding out what I love, trying new things, trying tropes that I maybe didn't like, trying new genres. All of that I really worked hard to do, and I really think I've been discovering myself as a reader. And as I grow and I change, I know that there never comes a point where I'll ever have an established understanding of who I am as a reader. I think it is ever evolving, but it was nice that 2024 fired up in me the want to and the love of discovering, if that makes any sense. I had set a goal to be more intentional with my reading too. I felt last year that I was devouring books to hit a number and devouring books just to click finished on my Goodreads rather than sitting with a book, enjoying a book, ingesting that book. I was just gobbling it down. And I think that came from, I was very new to what BookTube was and discovering BookTube at that point. And I think it came from that want to read more. Seeing how much booktubers read put in me this like unnecessary expectation that I would then have to, or to be a booktuber I had to. And I told myself to slow down, and that was not what I was on BookTube for. So I did that. I did become a more intentional reader. There was only one goal that I didn't quite hit in 2024, and that was I told myself to read less. I did. I told myself to slow down and to read less. In 2023, I had read 152 books. This year, I read 178. I would like to continue to try to read less, but at the same time, a number is just a number. If I'm enjoying what I'm doing and I'm not pushing myself and I'm listening to how I'm reading, that is what I'm going to stick with. I don't know if I have any goals for the next year. I don't know if I want to set any goals. I would like to try to stay consistent. I would like to do that. So let's set a consistency goal. And let's set a 5 deep research long chat goal. Those take a lot of time out of me. So let's set a 5 goal for that. I'm really enjoying those, and those are a new addition. When it comes to reading, I just want to keep up what I said last year and stick with that self-discovery, that trying new things, and actively not making my entire reading list something that I found on somebody else's video, which is hard at this time of the year with everybody putting out their favorites. But like I said in my last year video, everybody's favorites are the exact same. So I don't think it'll be too difficult. I'm probably gonna read some, but I think I just want that to be my goal. Continuously discovering myself as a reader, continuously trying new things, and not caring that I fail and not caring that something is bad. I do think that this idea of efficiency when it comes to reading, and this idea of being so efficient that I only grab books that other people have said are good, and this idea that reading needs to be so curated, and I want to walk more book stacks and pick up things that I haven't heard before. I've been doing that, actually. A lot of my book stacks are created because I go to a bookstore, walk the shelves, and then add to my notes section just the things that jumped out at me, just covers that jumped out at me. I don't even read what they're about anymore. I see a cover that I see is interesting, and I write it down in my notes. So I want to keep that up. I want to keep up the habit that I've formed of, let's just say that. I'm going to lock that one in. I would like that 50% of my reads be books that I found from walking in the library or walking through a bookstore or seeing in an article that I've read. But 50% of my books cannot come from BookTube or BookTok. I can stand by that. That feels like a good one. I think that'll just be the only one I set for myself. I'm not going to set any number goals. I'm not going to set any page goals. I'm not going to set any genre goals. This is a hobby. And I would like my hobby to be fulfilling. I don't know any words for that. I think I'm hungry and I'm not creating any better words. I'm excited about the books that we are reading today. So let's at home, get me some breakfast, and I'm going to tell you what we're reading. Thank you for enjoying some time outside with me. I needed the fresh air. I hope that this audio worked. This was my first time trying to connect it to the camera, and I don't know if I'm holding it in the right spot. I'm not filming this again, and I won't know until I edit it in a few days if this came out correct. So hopefully this worked, and we can enjoy more talks in different settings. I would love that. It's January in Texas, and it's 75 degrees at 9:30 a.m. So I'm pretty sure year-round we can sit outside and enjoy some talks. For a book that is so high on my anticipated reads, I think I'm tapping out. I really think I'm tapping out. I've given it 100 pages, and 100 pages feels like more than enough leeway for me to give this book. There were quite a few of you who said that this was also on your TBR. Please make it past page 100 so you can tell me how you're feeling, what's going on, or like give me a how you felt at page 100 and then how you felt after page 100, because I'm gonna respectfully put it down. Let me at least tell you what happens on the first 100 pages though. So you open up with our main character, Lennon. She's at her engagement party. The scene that you open up to is Lennon is looking into her mirror. And she's seeing all of these reflections of herself. And then one of those reflections looks different. It doesn't have eyes. She refers to this as the aberration. Like she's had multiple instances, multiple encounters with this aberration. And she gets jogged out of it, whatever, goes to the engagement party. She catches her fiance, Wyatt, mid-coitus with a mutual friend. So then Lennon hops into a car and speeds off to an abandoned mall. At this abandoned mall, she takes with her a bunch of blood thinners with nefarious intent upon herself. And at the mall, she sees a phone booth that starts ringing very loudly to the point where she thinks it's increasing in volume. She goes to answer the phone booth, locks herself in it, and they say, "Do you still have your name?" That's the question. "Do you still have your name?" And she responds, "Lennon," to which they then say, "Lennon what?" They say that they are a representative of Drayton College and they would love for her to make her interview. She says, "Of course, I haven't applied to Drayton College." They cut her off to give her the address and hang up, to which she's typing it into the GPS. And she immediately believes that the person that was on the other end of the call is that aberration that she sees in the mirror. So she goes to the address that was given to her immediately. It's a long drive, pretty far away, and to make it to that interview time that they had given her, she has to leave right now. So she speeds off, doesn't talk to anybody. She gets there. When she gets there, she pulls up to this, it's just a home. It's a little house, a little rundown house. She pulls a crowbar out of the trunk, goes up to the home, knocks a few times, and a very attractive man comes to the door. And she says he looked to be in his late 40s, and Lennon found him to be almost excessively good looking. He says, "Oh, can I take that off your hands?" Takes the crowbar from her. So then they go into the home and sit down. And the guy, his name is Benedict, he says, "I guess I'll tell you about Drayton." And he said he had graduated years ago, back when she was no more than an egg in her mother's womb. Lennon interjects. Of course, when he is explaining about the Drayton, she says, "I didn't apply here," to which he follows up to say, "Of course you did. Everyone applied, whether they know it or not." There's a little bit of a back and forth about how is this possible, whatever. But he says that the process was that she said she never presented a portfolio and she's never taken an exam. Benedict responds that you've already taken it. The first phase of testing begins at birth. And the second, the interview. And the third, the entry exam. Benedict offers her some food and says, "You're going to need this because there's going to be some pain later on and you can't experience pain on an empty stomach." He then proceeds to prod her with information that feels like he should not have. To say, "You grew up in Brunswick, Georgia. Yours was the only black family within your neighborhood. A half-built subdivision. And do you hold these facts to be true?" Lennon, of course, is confused as to why he knows this information. He continues with his questioning, bringing up certain memories. A memory of the fact that her dad taught her how to kill starling birds because starling birds, take the nests and harm other birds. He asks her about that memory, and he asks her, "You walk down a narrow lane. Someone walks towards you from the opposite direction. The path isn't wide enough to accommodate both of you. Are you the one that steps aside?" He asks about her engagement. She asks what happened to him and how it made her feel, and if she struggled with thoughts of the type that she had on her way to the mall before. And then he says, "Hop in the elevator and head up to the 8th floor." To which she finds herself going into a testing room. Now, the room that they're testing in, the types of questions that are on this paper test are a photo of a person, and then what is their predominant emotion? A, yearning. B, rage. C, shock. D, resignation. E, none of the above. It's a multiple choice question just with photos. asking what their feelings are, what feelings they're expressing, what they're hiding, if they're hiding any secrets. That's it. Test done. She now heads to the final part of the test. And the final part of the test, she goes into a room and a man comes in and sits down across from her. His name is Dante. Dante then says, let's begin. Make me lift this pig figurine. And so she responds to say, oh, please lift the pig figurine. And he says, I said make me. And she's confused. Of course, there's no explanation to anything. And he checks his watch a few times. He's mumbling to himself to say this is a waste of time. He has a bit of an attitude with how she doesn't know what to do. So then she gets upset. In her head, she just, gets angry and then starts focusing. Her nose starts bleeding. Mind you, her nose bled during the test too. It's just dropping everywhere. Her nose, she literally says her nose bled and dropped onto the paper. It was just falling out. She's not covering it. She's not trying to plug her nose, and it's happening again. And while she's sitting there, it says that she starts seizing, and the seizing is growing more severe. And Lennon feared she would be sick or scream or lose herself to the throes of passion so complete she wasn't sure she'd survive it. Passion turned to pain. Her ears began to ring, and she realized that this was the pain that Benedict, the one who fed her, had warned her of. So then she's seizing. Dante picks up the pig, and she blacks out. She then later wakes up in this hospital room. She's in this gown, and she asks the person next to her what happened. He said, oh, you suffered 4 seizures. One of them was a grand mal seizure. And she goes, that's crazy. I need to take a shower. If you know anything about grand mal seizures, you don't just hop up and go take a shower and you're good. But she hops up, she cleans herself up, makes herself look good. Once she is done showering, she's told that she needs to be at a mandatory assembly. She sprints over there, and they tell them a little bit about the history of this school, the Drayton School. The Drayton School was made by this man who was a philosopher by trade and a Quaker by practice, a tireless abolitionist who wanted his students to embody the Socratic ideal of a good man. He then became ambitious to the point that he needed extraordinary special students who were good at the art of persuasion. And there was one really, really special student who was one of the first, whose name was William, who persuaded this school to essentially not exist in this reality plane or something. And that's all they discuss at the assembly, just kind of why this school can't be found and who started it. That is it. After the assembly ends, Lennon then goes to her dorm room and sees a girl sitting cross-legged on the edge of the bed. She had long hair that fell in feathery layers about her shoulders. She was slim with slightly vacant blue eyes, and she had a gap between her 2 front teeth that was just wide enough to slide a quarter through. Lennon imagined doing just that. Imagine the girl swallowing down the coin, where, in the pit of her stomach, it would be digested. How might I assist you? The girl might have asked, in the cheery and robotic tone of an AI helper. Looking at her, Lennon thought that almost every girl who had ever lived, every teenager crawling through the bowels of the internet, every middle-aged woman armed with a diet plan and a prayer, every awkward girl who'd sat alone at lunch had hoped to look like some iteration of her. If only because it would make life that much easier. This is going to be a trend. Every single person described is going to be so skinny, so slim, so skinny they almost look faint. So skinny they look
sickly. I don't know if this comes up later, like maybe their powers are wasting away at them, but the amount of times that the slimness of characters was brought up was a little odd to me. Whatever, she gets into her room, reads a letter, she has a meeting with Dante. Dante has a little bit of a discussion with her and gives her a sandwich. Their discussion isn't anything special, but I did have a problem with how this author writes. And I am unsure if Alexis Henderson knows how to write a sentence. Dante's office was more of a tightly contained library, really. Every available inch of space and half of the floor was devoted to books. There were so many of them, neatly organized into stacks, and Lennon could tell, based on the broken spines and the bare hard covers, without dust jackets, that they'd been read and reread many times over. It was a collection curated out of love and not for show. There was a hearth crowded between two bookshelves, more books stacked up on the mantel, a few of them open, others closed over pens and receipts, the flattened boxes of cigarettes and other makeshift bookmarks. In one corner of the room, a well-stocked bar cart. In another, a potted palm. Before the fireplace, a long brown leather sofa, standing low to the ground on the wooden legs as thin as pencils. And, of course, there was a desk with chairs on either side of equal size. Standing at its left corner in the shadow of a computer monitor was the three-legged pig she compelled Dante to lift during the entry exam. We had a good collection of sentence fragments there. Just full-blown sentence fragments, which were odd to read. There are so many moments where this happens. The biggest thing when it comes to writing style that I thought was odd was, I'm going to read it because I don't know how to explain it other than to show you an example. So first, when she was heading on her way to, so we're going to go back a couple scenes just so I can bring up some other writing style things that I just cannot deal with. When she is on her way to this meeting, just before the description of the office that I just gave you, when she's on the way, there are some students sitting in the hallway outside of that office. He led her down a narrow hall into a small waiting room where a group of 3 students sat, talking in whispers. There was a lanky boy with ice blonde hair who was so pale Lennon was actually concerned for his well-being. Beside him, a boy who was his opposite in every way except in frame and height. Dark skin, dark hair, dark eyes, enviably long lashes. Lennon immediately guessed he was Nigerian and was right. She had an eye for these things. What does that mean? So there's a sentence. Here's what I'm talking about. So they're talking. And it says they're in the middle of a discussion. The boy says, "No one does," said the other boy, who Lennon later learned was named Adam. There were these such confusing moments where it was like Lennon would later learn. Lennon later learned. That was so confusing to me. What do you mean we later learned? What do you mean? It did that multiple times. Lennon later learned. Lennon later learned. Whatever. Okay, back to the meeting. They have their annoying little meeting in the office. Nothing really happens. They have a little chat. She still doesn't learn anything more about this school. Well, they then have a party to celebrate that there are new students. They left, whatever. Let's have a little bit of a celebration to recognize the new students at Drayton College. This is going to be the end of this first day at the school, right? She walks over to a boy. She looks over at him. She's like, he's not that conventionally attractive. He's kind of quiet. He's slurping down alcohol. Let me approach him. Here's the thing. As she listened to Ian speak in a kind of drunken ramble, Lennon recognized that he wasn't particularly kind. He spoke with the sort of inflated self-assurance that most deeply insecure people do. She was especially drawn to him for this reason. She had always liked men who had a point to prove to themselves or to her or the whole world. And as Ian rambled, she found herself leaning closer, slipping the froth off the top of her cocktail, posing the unspoken offers people are apt to when they're just drunk and brave enough. Eventually, he asked her a few questions about her past, clearly trying to confirm she was single. And Lennon obliged, offering up the story of her newly ended relationship with Wyatt. They didn't bother to go back to her room at Ethos or his at Pathos. Instead, they found a secluded corner of some overgrown courtyard far from the noise of the garden. Quickly and in the midnight dark, they did what they had come there to do. There were no words exchanged, no discussion. It was rough and quick, and Lennon spent the time she wasn't on her knees, with her chest pressed painfully to the moss-eaten bricks of the crumbling courtyard wall as Ian moved behind her. When they finished, only a few moments after they'd first begun, Lennon stripped off her sweater and used it to wipe her inner thighs. Then she tied that same sweater around her waist. A little gross, but she didn't know what else to do with it. Pulled up her pants and buttoned them. That was fun, she said, because it seemed like the sort of thing she was supposed to say after an encounter like that one. In truth, Lennon hadn't had many hiccups at all. The one she remembered, she'd been too drunk to say much of anything after the deed was done. She wasn't like her husband and the woman he cheated on her with. She didn't know how to be the sort of person who formed hidden attachments behind a front of nonchalance, who kept sex secret and apart from everything else in their lives. But she desperately wanted to be, if only to sever whatever thread still connected her and Wyatt, to prove more to herself than anyone else that she could do the same things he did, that she could hurt him too. So that was the start of me. That was page 67. So I just was immediately like kind of tired of Lennon. I don't know what the point of that scene was. I don't like how it was written. It felt like, I don't know, like it was a parody of I don't know. Oh gosh, it was just kind of gross. I didn't like that at all. She has a few classes and she goes to meditation class, struggles in meditation class. She's struggling in Dante's class. Her advisor, the man that she seized in front of, and bled near and had her little meeting with. In his class, they're supposed to be working on rats, and she's not doing well because she feels really bad for the rat. And then there's one day where she's having a bit of a breakdown because she doesn't want to harm this rat, right? She leaves the class. Her chest is aching. "Are you all right?" Dante asked behind her. "I can't do it." Lennon could barely get the words out. "He's so small and weak, and I'm afraid I'll kill him." "The rat?" She nodded, dragged a hand through her hair, the feeling of her fingertips scratching along her scalp, grounding her some. She sucked in a breath, then another. Dante came to stand beside her. "You persuaded me just fine." "You're different." "How so?" "You effing deserved it." "So persuasion is something that a person either deserves or doesn't, like a punishment?" I don't know. I guess. It's certainly not a gift." "So during the entry exam, you saw yourself as punishing me?" "I didn't think about it like that." "What did you think about? I want your take." "I guess I thought you were smug, and I thought you were goading me, intentionally ticking me off. That made me feel small and desperate," she said, and realized she was beginning to feel better. Her hands weren't shaking as violently. Her heartbeat had drastically slowed. The floor firmed beneath her feet. Dante had distracted her, talked her down out of a full panic attack without her even realizing it. Dang, he was good. I felt desperate to prove that I was worth something. Not just to you, but to myself. Benedict did the same at the house during that interview. He dredged up all this shiznit about my past that made me so ashamed and so eager to prove that I could be something more than what I have been. And what have you been, Lennon? Weak. I don't know what it was, but this whole interaction annoyed me. They said 3 words to each other. And she's like, "Wow, he was so good at bringing me down from my panic attack." That conversation was nothing. And then also her little diatribe about how she was feeling during those little testing moments. You are somewhere you've never been. You don't know what this school is. This man was asking you about your memories. and you were trying to prove yourself to him and prove that you weren't weak. He was asking about 3 little memories. And then this guy said, make me pick up a pig, and you were proving to him, you are somewhere. You don't know anything about this school. If somebody told me, hey, you've got superpowers, I wouldn't just immediately be like, I need to prove myself to these people. No, this is just, I don't get it. I don't get it. She hooks up with that one guy a little bit more. It's very passionless. There's literally a moment where he like puts his hand on her leg and he's like, hey, are we going to do this? Because if not, I kind of got to get to sleep. So they do it. They do that for a minute. And then there's this other moment where they're practicing on putting the rats into a state of catatonia. And there's this paragraph. What Dante wasn't saying was that catatonia in itself was a kind of torture. Lennon knew that because she herself had once entered into such a state just before she dropped out of college. Her body had frozen in a kind of rictus, and for 3 days she remained totally despondent. She didn't eat and barely blinked, and her sister Carly had to take family leave at the law practice where she worked to camp out in Lennon's dorm room and ladle broth into her mouth in a desperate attempt to keep her from being hospitalized. Lennon didn't fare well in hospitals. That doesn't even make sense. see myself picking up another book today. I really don't. Academy for Liars, those 100 pages, really put a bad taste in my mouth, and I think I would be doing myself and the next book a disservice to try to force another read out of me today. I have a busy reading week ahead of me because I'm trying to finish all of 1Q84 this week and put a big dent in the Murakami reading that I have to do for that coming video essay. So I have a heavy reading week ahead of me, so I don't really feel like pushing myself into another book or starting a big book because I have so many things that I want to get done during this week. So I'm probably just gonna cut the vlog here. I was gonna pick up something and try to get through something and try to push through a book today, but that didn't feel right, all so that I could have something to talk about on the vlog. It just didn't work this time. It didn't go well this time, and I was gonna try to hammer in another read, and I tried to think about picking up something small, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna end tonight. I'm gonna watch something off of Netflix and catch up in my journals because I fell behind this past week. It's been a bit of a weird time just in life, I guess. I don't know, in my head, to where I've fallen quite behind in a lot of the things that I love. So I might just throw on something and do some journaling. I've set up all those pages of where I am behind. So I'm gonna go through that and at that point call it a night. I have work bright and early in the morning, so not much is happening with me tonight. I almost want to apologize for not reading that much today, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. And this was one of those times. So if you read Academy for Liars, please spoil it for me. I don't see myself trying it again. I don't enjoy Lennon. I don't like Lennon. Tell me how it goes. Please. Don't let me dissuade you. I just, for some reason, it's very rare that I feel so much like visceral distaste with a character, and that one was it. You might not. It might be a personal thing for me, but that's all you're gonna get from me today. A bit of a failure, wasn't it? Well, not a failure. Let's not say that. Wrong energy. Not over here. It was a great success in experimentation. It was a great success just a great success. What else would be a great success than anything? I will see you on Wednesday. I hope you have a good week. I hope you're reading some good things. I will talk to you next time.